working on my XT, hooking up lights now. I'm just playing around. You know, it's a 6-volt lighting coil. It's got 2 leads coming off it. And I'm running 2 rectifiers, one off each lead. Now, in theory, they're 6 volt, but you know, the 6 volt leads are actually AC. You know, the lighting coil is actually AC. The rectifiers turn it to DC. And that is an LED light. And it actually, you know, it does the normal lighting coil thing where at an idle you have flickering lights. But you rev that thing up, and it's got no trouble running a 12-volt bulb. But I think that, like I say, that flash, I think that there was an epileptic euphoria. I think he would have to fit. I think that's, you know, I've got regular 6-volt headlight there. But it would run an LED. A 12-volt LED. It's interesting. So they've got a pretty basic setup on it. But you're not running a battery. The thing with having the 2 rectifiers, I could actually run a battery, which would get rid of some of that pulsation in the lighting. But you know, these are, like I say, a pretty simple setup. You know, they use a lighting coil and an ignition coil. This is the ignition coil, this is the lighting coil. You know, and the magnets just spin around them. So it's pretty straightforward. You know, and like I say, you do get that pulsation at an idle. It's an option. Otherwise, I've got a regular, you know, this is a regular 6-volt. A regular incandescent. See, the incandescent type, you can actually run on AC current. I wouldn't need that arrangement of rectifiers. But I thought, well, I kind of want them in there in case I do have to. I could easily, you know, the battery for these is these little 6-volters. I could actually put a 6-volt in there. But it would only be to meet a legal requirement that you have to have it so that if your bike is disabled, you can have a light on. Well, to me, it's nonsense. If it's disabled, you push in the ditch. You don't sit in the middle of the road. And, you know, old bikes used to run lighting coils all the time without a battery. But a battery does smooth out those pulsations in the system. Yeah, it's interesting. But I can, you know, like I say, I've got 2 leads coming off of the lighting coils. And I've got, you know, where it comes up from the motor, just 1 wire for the ignition. That's a whole separate system. It comes off the ignition coil, runs up to your ignition coil and to your kill switch. That's all she takes. Well, and there's one that branches off and goes over to the points. But it is 1 continuous wire, you know, 1 circuit. And I'm running the, I don't even know where the key is for this anymore, but I'm running the regular old Bergera push a button and kill. You know, it's old school. But that, it's impressive that it'll run. But LEDs, because when it's at idle, it's putting out You know, when I was checking with the voltmeter, like 2 to 3 volts at an idle. Then you rev it up and she'll go up to like 8, you know. But she'll run that LED no problem. So it gives me options because you do get, you know, without a regulator and a battery, you get these. Well, these rectifiers are actually rectifier regulators, but they don't work like a regular regulator. They're basically just turning AC into DC. Which I thought, you know, the DC is good if you need to run a battery. You got to have DC to charge your battery. But also a DC you can run LED, like for your turn signals and your tail light and all that. You can't do that with AC. AC has got to be a regular incandescent type bulb. But they don't seem to be too fussy about voltages. Works good, starts up well, drives well. I just figured I got to get lights working on it sometime, so I figured I'd do that. But I like the LEDs. They don't use much power, and like I said, they're not fussy about voltage. I wouldn't use that one because that one has got, it's got all kinds of nonsense on it. You know, a halo around the outside that'll go either amber or white. And I'll tell you, they're incredibly bright. She's thought provoking. But I think on this one, I'm just going to go ahead and run my 6-volt incandescent that actually has a separate daytime running light, so you don't have to run your headlight. Run that on a separate, because I like to be able to not run the headlight all the time. A lot of options involved. But it's a good lighting coil. So like this one is different in that it's got one lead going out. This is that's an XT lighting coil that's on there that has 2 leads. This is a TT that has 1 lead. You know, 1 lead for the light. But that XT one is bigger and it's got different windings on the outside, then runs a separate wire that gives you that battery option. We'll mull this over some more, but it's good I got options. It looks like a hell of a jumbled mess here, but it's actually pretty straightforward. And I do have a whole bunch of these regular, well, like here's your points plate, your backing plate, which is under that cover there. But I've got a bunch of the regular Yamaha connectors so I can hook everything up. And I got all kinds of wire of various colors to try to keep it coordinated. So that if you do have a problem. But honestly, if I'm running incandescent bulbs, if you should have a rectifier failure, because what they are is, there's a series of diodes in there that turns the AC into DC. But you could simply bypass them. You could jump right together, run AC with an incandescent. But if you got LEDs, they demand direct, or you will fry them. Interesting, though.